Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Chasing Cases with Maddie, and yes, I know I missed a week, and I will forever hold myself to that I promised at least 2 videos a month every other week, and have not fulfilled that. So I'm sorry, but this week I am bringing you guys a very interesting case. This case is very old. I'd say very old considering all the cases we have going on right now and had going on in the past like 2 decades. So this is going to be covering the Menendez murders, and we're going to be diving into the Menendez brothers, Eric and Lyle. So let's get into it. Let's chase some cases. So what makes this crime interesting is a few key details. So this is not a very interesting fact, but the brothers lied to police at the night of the investigation. The night of August 20th, the boys lied to the police. They completely made up a fabricated event. They were saying that the mafia was out to kill Jose and that Kitty must have just been hit because she was there. And the boys were young and naive, and they claimed that they saw gun smoke when they went into the house. But the only way you're going to see gun smoke is if you're the one firing or if you're in the room as the gun is going off, because gun smoke dissipates like very quickly. It's not going to linger for an hour or two as the boys were claiming. Now, another key point of this case is the fact that they had 2 trials. The first one resulted in a hung jury, and the second one was what sentenced the boys to life in prison without parole. Now, let's get into some events of the crime. So, the night of the crime, August 20th, 1989, the 2 brothers walked into the den of their Beverly Hills mansion and shot and killed Kitty and Jose Menendez with their shotguns that they had previously purchased, thus premeditating the crime. The lead up to the crime, in 1988, Eric and Lyle were caught burglarizing houses. They were caught stealing goods that equated to, I want to say, just over $100,000. So when the boys were caught, Jose decided to let Eric take the fall so Lyle could still go to college, thus ruining Eric's future. The brothers struggled with normal life, receiving poor grades. They did not do well in school. They were trying to go for academics and receive scholarships for tennis and anything that they could get into that Jose wanted them to. It was basically Jose's way or the highway. It was very much a controlling, father dynamic in that house. Right before the murder, the boys decided to try and fabricate an alibi. They attempted to purchase movie tickets, and that didn't work out. They attempted to do other things, like say they were at stores or with friends, and that just did not work out. And so eventually they were caught by the police. In a session with Dr. Jerome Oziel, Eric finally admitted to the murder of his parents because the guilt was eating away at him, and he admitted to the crimes years later. It was not quickly after the murders, it was several years later. Now we're getting into the trial after the boys were caught and the police were questioning them and find out their alibi was a lie. So now we're getting into trial number 1. So with trial number 1, cameras were allowed in the courtroom. There were publicists, journalists, there was national news coverage of the Menendez trial, and so everyone kind of said that affected the case, and that's why it resulted in a hung jury, because no matter where you went, you were faced with this trial and the ongoings and how brutal they murdered their parents, how they lied, how they were just spoiled rich boys. And so with that feeds the jury it creates a bias, and so it resulted in a hung jury, of course, and so they had to retry all of that. The brothers in the first trial both had abuse allegations towards their father, Jose, and saying that Kitty helped Jose to abuse his children, and it was forms of physical, mental, emotional, and sexual abuse. So that kind of paints the picture of Jose as a person. Multiple witnesses, including cousins and friends, could attest to these statements, including a cousin that had stayed over at the house frequently and had been informed of the hallway rule, which was no one was allowed to go down the hallway when Jose had one of the boys in a bedroom. And one thing that has always messed with this case was it was Lyle's ex-girlfriend who had said that Lyle had tried to get her to lie and say that he had admitted abuse to her, and that his dad was abusing him and had abused him, and she had gotten on the witness stand and said that he had tried to pay her for that. So that has always hurt the case. No decision could be reached, and thus hung jury, and we get into trial 2 now. So key details of trial number 2, there were no cameras allowed in the courtroom, and I think this also hurt the case a little bit because it's kind of a push and pull thing. If you're trying to remain unbiased, you're going to have just clear-cut facts, no emotion, which I understand that's how juries are supposed to be. It's no emotion. You're supposed to just go on evidence and facts. But with this second trial, they also left out the abuse allegations. They left it clean-cut. Because they were saying that the boys were adults, they could have left. That was their own fault for staying in an abusive situation. With trial 2, the key details, Eric was on the stand for 15 days. Yes, 15 days, recounting the crime, recounting where he had purchased the shotguns, the alibi, the lying to the cops, what they did afterwards, such as buying Rolexes and cars and whatever. Because the way I see it, Jose had controlled the money their entire lives, so they were getting their kind of get back. They were like, look, Dad, we can buy this shit. Like, we get the nice shit now. Like, that's how I see it, at least. This is the trial that Lyle's ex-fiance got up on the stand and said the claims of begging and bribing to get the response in the witness statement that Lyle and Eric desperately needed for their trial, and thus that hurt the trial very, very much, because you're witness tampering at that point if you're trying to pay off people, but obviously, like, who knows. And another key detail, Lyle did not testify at all during the second trial. Eric was on the stand for 15 days, but Lyle did not testify at all. Now we're going to get into some screenshots and some updates. I fear this is going to become a normal occurrence, that I get a spam phone call every time that I film a Chasing Cases episode. When I film vlogs, nothing. When I film normal content, nothing. When I sit down and film Chasing Cases, I always have to get a spam phone call. So let's continue on. I'm going to read the screenshots directly now. I'm also going to be putting them up on the screen so you can see the full screenshot. I'm just going to be reading excerpts that I find are important. So let's continue. Khan challenged Eric's allegation that he was raped at the age of 18 when he had a vehicle and enough money to leave his parents' home. Khan asked him why he did not join the army. Eric said he would not be safe from his father in the army because he was the most powerful man I've ever met. Eric said there was no witnesses to the allegations of sexual abuse. In another screenshot, it says, Judge Weisberg determined that there was insufficient evidence to support the claim that the brothers were in imminent danger when they murdered their parents. However, he allowed the defense to argue that the brothers shot Jose in the heat of passion, but not their mother, Kitty. He concluded that while there was enough evidence to suggest Jose might have provoked his sons into committing homicide, there was not enough to indicate Kitty did. Really? Okay. So now we go into the key details of after we get the sentencing, we get the hearings. The brothers have been in prison now for 35 years. Now we have Kitty's family speaking out. You've got the boys' aunts, and I know I call them boys and brothers, and it's because they're literally, when you go into prison, it's like you kind of have that mental block until you choose to not have that mental block anymore. It's like it's something you have to work through, the institutionalization of the brain. So the brothers, the boys, whatever you want to refer to them as, have been in prison for 35 years now. They were separated for decades. They're now together again at J. Donovan Correctional Facility in California. the Menendez brothers are making changes. They're graduating school, finishing bachelor's degrees. Like, they're working to make a change. Like, I want to say Eric and Lyle have been working together with other inmates to try and introduce like a therapy dog program. They're trying to introduce other things to try and help people to, if you're living in prison, like if you're going to be spending the rest of your life in prison, we should make it comfortable or at least somewhat positive, because if you continue to have it as a negative experience, as these people continuously come in and out of the prison, you're not going to have prison reform. And that's what the boys are fighting for, is prison reform. And that's what a lot of ex-prisoners, ex-cons, whatever, they're all fighting for prison reform, because it is a messed up system, very much so. The last update I wanted to touch on was that Eric Menendez was actually hospitalized recently, and their lawyer, Mark Garagos, was fighting to try and use that as leverage to release the boys early before their hearings. Their hearings are actually going on as we speak right now, because I'm filming this August 20th and I'm gonna edit it and all that, so their hearings will have happened, so I might make an update for this video to touch on it. But as for now, the case is closed. The boys did not get out early because Eric was in the hospital. Eric was suffering from kidney stones, so luckily he passed those. He's fine. I want to say he's back in prison, and so now we go to the hearings and all that and find out what is happening now, and if they're going to be getting out after good time of 60% of their sentence, or if they're going to be released on parole now. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video, and I understand I did not focus on the victims, but this is my channel, my opinion, that I believe in the sexual abuse allegations, because just because you don't talk about it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Chasing Cases. I hope to see you guys in 2 weeks covering a different case. I hope I see you in 2 weeks and that it's not any shorter than that or any longer. All right, I'll see you guys later. Love you.